Josiah Callahan pressed his dying son against his chest and screamed into the blizzard. 5-year-old Toby had stopped shivering 10 minutes ago. That was worse than the cold. That meant his boy's body was giving up. 20 months ago, Joe buried his wife. Tonight on Christmas Eve, he might bury his children too. Then, through the white death swirling around them, his oldest boy pointed. A light, faint and golden. Half a mile away, maybe less. Joe didn't pray anymore, hadn't since Clara died. But he prayed now. Please, not my boys. Take me instead. Just not my boys. If you want to know whether that light saved them, subscribe to our channel and stay until the end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story travels. The wagon wheel hit ice beneath fresh snow. Josiah Callahan felt it before he heard it. That sickening lurch. The crack of wood giving way. Supplies sliding. His 3 sons crying out. His shoulder slammed frozen ground hard enough to steal his breath. "Papa!" 3 voices, terrified, but alive. Joe pushed up with his good arm. His left shoulder screamed. Something wrong there. Wrenched bad. Maybe cracked. Didn't matter. "Everyone out! Now! Careful!" Eli climbed down first. 11 years old, jaw set hard, hands shaking but trying not to show it. The boy had aged 10 years and 20 months. Since Clara died. Since everything died. Nate came next. 7. Silent as a ghost. The boy had stopped talking much after they buried his mama. Some days he didn't talk at all. Toby last. 5 years old. Lips already going blue. "Papa, I'm cold." "I know, son." Joe walked around the wagon. The axle was cracked clean through. Split wood. Bent iron. No fixing that. Not here. Not tonight. Not without a blacksmith and tools and time they didn't have. 15 miles to town. Temperature dropping fast. Wind cutting through their coats like they were made of paper. "Can you fix it?" Nate's voice. Soft. Hopeful. Still believing Papa could fix anything. Joe looked at his boys. Really looked. Eli trying to be brave. Nate waiting for answers. Toby shivering so hard his teeth clicked together. "No, I can't fix it." The words tasted like poison. "Then what do we do?" Eli stepped closer. "Papa, what do we do?" Joe had taken this Christmas Eve supply run to escape. The empty house. Clara's ghost in every corner. Her apron still hanging by the stove. Her sewing basket still by her chair. 20 months and he couldn't move any of it. Couldn't let go. And now his cowardice might kill his sons. "We walk." "Walk where?" Eli's voice cracked. "There's nothing out here. We passed the Hendricks place 6 miles back. We'll freeze before. We walk until we find shelter, or we die trying. Those are our choices." Harsh words. Too harsh. But Joe had no softness left. Clara had taken all his softness with her when she went. He grabbed Eli's hand, then Nate's. Lifted Toby against his chest. His shoulders screamed, but he didn't care. "We stay together. We don't let go. Nothing makes you let go. Understand?" 3 boys nodded. They stepped into white death. Each step was a battle. Snow knee-deep, thigh-deep in the drifts. Joe half-carried Toby through the worst of it. His shoulder burned with every movement. Hot wire running from shoulder to spine. "Talk to me, Eli." "About what?" "Anything. Keep your brother awake. Keep yourself awake." Eli was quiet for a moment. Then, "Remember when Mama made that apple pie? The one that burned on the bottom?" "She cried," Nate whispered. First words he'd spoken in 2 days. "She cried because it was Papa's birthday, and she ruined it." "She didn't ruin anything." Joe's voice came out rough. "That was the best pie I ever had." "You ate 3 pieces," Eli said. "Even the burned parts." Mama laughed. Toby's small voice against Joe's neck. She laughed so hard she couldn't breathe. Joe remembered. God, he remembered. Clara bent over the kitchen table, tears streaming down her face, laughing at herself for crying over a pie. And Joe, eating every bite just to see her smile. That was 3 years ago, a lifetime ago, before the pregnancy that killed her, before the baby that died with her, before Joe stopped knowing how to be a father to the 3 boys who survived. "Papa?" Nate's voice, barely audible over the wind. "Are we gonna die?" Joe should lie, should say something comforting, something a good father would say. "Not if I can help it." That ain't an answer. It's the only one I got. They pushed forward, one step, then another, then another. Eli fell, went down hard in a drift that swallowed him to his chest. Joe hauled him up one-handed, Toby still pressed against him. "You hurt?" "No, sir." "Then keep moving." "Papa, I can't feel my feet." "Keep moving anyway." Cruel. He knew it was cruel. But stopping meant dying. And Joe would drag his sons through hell itself before he let them die. Nate fell next. Snow filled his coat. His small face went white. Not from cold, from fear. "I can't." The boy's voice broke. "Papa, I can't." Joe knelt in the snow, put his face close to his middle son's. "You can. You're a Callahan. Your mama carried you inside her for 9 months, and she didn't quit. She brought you into this world screaming and fighting, and she didn't quit. You don't get to quit either. You hear me?" Nate's eyes filled with tears that froze on his cheeks. "I miss her, Papa." "I know. I miss her too." "Do you? Sometimes I think you forgot about her. You never talk about her anymore. You never say her name. It's like she never existed." The words hit Joe like fists. He couldn't answer. Couldn't explain that saying Clara's name felt like swallowing broken glass. That talking about her meant feeling things he'd spent 20 months trying not to feel. "Get up." Joe pulled Nate to his feet. "We'll talk about your mama later. Right now, we walk." They walked. Behind them, the wagon disappeared. Ahead, nothing but white. White sky. White ground. White death, waiting patient and certain. "Papa." Toby's voice was getting weaker. "Papa, I'm sleepy." "No. God, no. Stay awake, Toby. But I'm tired." "I know. Tell me something. Tell me what you want for Christmas." "Christmas?" The boy's small body shuddered against Joe's chest. "I forgot it was Christmas." "It's Christmas Eve. Tomorrow's Christmas Day. What do you want? Tell me." "I want..." Toby's eyes fluttered. "I want Mama to come back." Joe's throat closed completely. "Mama can't come back, son." "I know." Toby's arms tightened around Joe's neck. Weak. Getting weaker. "Then I want us to be happy again. Like before Mama went to heaven. We were happy then. Weren't we, Papa?" "Yeah. We were happy." "Are we ever gonna be happy again?" Joe had no answer. He'd been asking himself that question for 20 months, still didn't know. "Papa, look," Eli's voice, sharp, excited. Joe squinted through the snow. Wind burned his eyes. Ice formed on his lashes. At first, nothing. Just white on white on white. Then, a light. Faint. Golden. Half a mile distant. Maybe less. "I see it too," Nate breathed. "Papa, I see it." Could be real. Could be their eyes playing tricks. Could be death calling them home. Could be their only chance. That way. Stay close. They walked toward the light. Joe's legs burned. His shoulder screamed. His lungs felt like they were full of ice. But he kept moving. Kept putting one foot in front of the other. The light grew stronger. Not a mirage. Real. Solid. A cabin materialized from the storm, small but sturdy, built low to the ground against Wyoming winds, smoke rising from the chimney, and in the window a lamp burning golden and warm. Light in the window means nobody rides past. Frontier law, unwritten but sacred. You see that light, you know there's shelter. You know there's welcome. You know someone inside understands that next time it might be them out in the storm. Joe stumbled up to the door, raised his fist to knock. The door opened before he could. A woman stood there, backlit by firelight, mid-30s, auburn hair pulled back in a practical bun, work-worn hands, and eyes that assessed everything in a single glance. She looked at Joe, at the boys, at Toby's blue lips and Nate's white face and Eli's frozen tears. "Get inside." Her voice was command, not request. "All of you. Now." She pulled them in, slammed the door against the wind. The warmth hit Joe like a wall. His knees buckled. He caught himself on a chair. "Sit." The woman pointed. "Before you fall." "Ma'am, we don't want to." "Sit." Joe sat. The woman moved fast. No wasted motion. Quilts appeared from a chest. Heavy wool wrapped around each boy. The fire roared higher. Water heated. Coffee went on the stove. She knelt in front of Toby, checked his fingers, his toes, his ears. Frostbite starting on the ears. Caught it in time. She looked up at Joe. "That shoulder needs attention." "I'm fine." "You're not. But the boy first." She worked on Toby with gentle hands, warming him slowly, carefully, rubbing circulation back into his small fingers. "You're trained," Joe said. "Medical." "Nurse. Long time ago." "What's a trained nurse doing alone in Wyoming territory?" "Same thing you're doing in a blizzard on Christmas Eve." She didn't look up from Toby's hands. "Surviving." Eli watched her with suspicious eyes. "Where's your husband?" "Eli." Joe's voice was sharp. "Mind your manners." "It's all right." The woman stood. "Typhoid, 4 years ago." "I'm sorry," Nate said softly. "We know about that, losing someone." The woman looked at him. Something passed across her face. Recognition maybe, one wounded creature seeing another. "Your mama?" Nate nodded. "How long?" 20 months, Eli answered. 20 months and 12 days. The woman's eyes moved to Joe. He looked away. Couldn't hold that gaze. Couldn't let her see what was underneath. "I'll make supper," she said. "Then we'll tend that shoulder." She moved to the stove, started pulling out ingredients. Potatoes, carrots, dried beef, simple food. But she prepared it with care, with attention. The boys watched her like she was something miraculous. "What's your name?" Toby's voice, small but curious. Color coming back to his cheeks. The woman turned. Her face softened. "Margaret. Most folks call me Maggie." "I'm Toby. That's Nate. That's Eli. That's Papa." "Josiah," Joe said. "Josiah Callahan. We're grateful, Miss Maggie, more than I can say." "Just Maggie. And gratitude ain't necessary for following frontier law." She went back to cooking. Joe's eyes moved around the cabin, small but clean, well organized. A woman's touch everywhere, but something missing too. Something absent. No children's things, no toys, no small clothes, no cradle, no evidence that children had ever lived here. On a shelf by the window, 5 carved birds, each one different, each one beautiful. Hours of work in every feather. On the wall, a wedding photograph. Maggie and a bearded man, both young, both smiling, his hand on her shoulder, her hand covering his. Joe understood loneliness, had lived with it for 20 months. But Maggie had lived with it longer. 4 years in this cabin, 4 winters, 4 springs, 4 summers, 4 autumns, all alone. He wondered how she survived it, wondered if she really had. Supper was the best meal the boys had eaten in 20 months. Joe knew because he watched their faces, watched the surprise, the pleasure, the way they slowed down to savor instead of just swallowing to survive. He'd been burning everything since Clara died. Couldn't focus. Couldn't care. Food was fuel, nothing more. Something to keep them alive until what, he'd never figured that part out. "This is real good, Miss Maggie." Eli's voice was soft, almost shy. "Thank you. Mama used to cook like this." Nate spoke without looking up from his plate. "Before she got sick. Before the baby." The table went quiet. Joe's jaw tightened. They didn't talk about that. About the pregnancy that killed Clara. About the baby girl who died with her. About the double grave on the hill behind their house. "Your mama must have been a fine cook," Maggie said gently. "The best." Toby nodded. "She made apple pie. Even when she burned it, Papa ate 3 pieces. Because it was made with love." Maggie's voice was quiet. "That's the secret ingredient in everything. Love." Joe looked at her. She was watching the boys with an expression he couldn't name. Hunger, maybe. But not for food. After supper, the boys explored. Maggie told them they could look but ask before touching. Nate found the carved birds on the windowsill, picked one up, turned it over in his hands. "Did you make these winter projects?" Maggie was washing dishes. "Gets lonely out here. Needed something to do with my hands. They're beautiful." Nate's voice had more life in it than Joe had heard in months. "Can you teach me?" Maggie turned, looked at the boy. Something broke open in her face for just a moment before she controlled it. "Maybe, if your papa says it's all right." Nate looked at Joe, hopeful, alive in a way he hadn't been alive since Clara's funeral. "Fine by me," Joe said, and meant it. Toby had wandered to a small chest in the corner. He opened it before anyone could stop him. "Miss Maggie, what are these?" Joe saw Maggie's face go pale. He stood, walked over, looked into the chest. Baby clothes, tiny gowns, small shirts, knitted blankets, all carefully made, all never used. "Toby." Joe's voice was gentle. "Close that. It ain't yours to look through." "But they're so little. Are they for a baby? Do you have a baby, Miss Maggie?" The silence stretched too long. Maggie crossed the room, knelt beside Toby. Her hands shook slightly as she touched the small clothes. "I made these a long time ago." Her voice was steady, almost. When I hoped." She stopped. Couldn't finish. "When you hoped you'd have a baby?" Toby asked. "Like Mama hoped for our baby sister?" "Yes." Barely a whisper. "Like that." "What happened?" "Toby." Joe reached for his son. "That's enough." "It's all right." Maggie looked up at Joe. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying, refusing to cry. He should know. Children should know the truth. She closed the chest, stood up. "My body couldn't make babies." Simple words, said plain. Doctors told me when I was young. I didn't believe them. Kept hoping, kept making clothes, kept waiting. But, she shrugged. Some things ain't meant to be. Toby reached out, took her hand. "That's real sad, Miss Maggie. You'd be a good mama, I can tell." Maggie's control cracked. A single tear escaped. She wiped it away fast, angry at herself for showing weakness. "Thank you, Toby. That's kind of you to say." "It ain't kind. It's true. Ain't it, Papa?" Joe didn't answer. Couldn't answer, because looking at Maggie with his son's hand in hers, he felt something stir in his chest. Something he'd thought died with Clara, and that terrified him more than the blizzard ever had. Night fell hard. The storm still raged outside, but inside the cabin was warm, safe, quiet. Maggie announced sleeping arrangements. Boys in her bed, Joe by the fire for his shoulder. She'd take the loft. Will you stay? Toby looked up at her with those big eyes. Just till I fall asleep. Joe started to refuse, to say she'd done enough, to maintain some kind of boundary. But Maggie was already moving. Scoot over, she said, and the boys made room. All three climbed into the bed, arranged themselves around her like planets around the sun, not quite touching, but close, so close. Maggie began to sing, soft, low, an old hymn. Joe recognized it. Clara used to sing that song, used to hum it while she worked, used to sing it to the boys at bedtime. His throat closed, his eyes burned. He turned to the fire, couldn't watch, couldn't bear seeing his dead wife's song in this living woman's mouth. But he couldn't stop listening either. The singing continued, gentle, sure, and one by one, the boys' breathing deepened, slowed, steadied. Sleep. Real sleep. The first peaceful sleep they'd had in 20 months, because of her. Joe heard Maggie climb down from the bed, heard her soft footsteps crossing to the loft ladder. Miss Maggie, Eli's voice. Joe thought the boy was asleep. Yes. Thank you. For saving us. For everything. A pause. Then, You're welcome, Eli. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Joe heard her climb the ladder, heard the loft floor creak as she settled. Then silence. Just the wind outside and the fire crackling and his sons breathing peaceful for the first time in too long. Joe lay in the chair by the fire and stared at the ceiling and tried not to think about the woman in the loft. She was a stranger, a kind stranger who'd saved their lives, but still a stranger. And yet, his boys had smiled tonight, had laughed, had talked about Clara without that terrible frozen silence that usually followed her name. Nate had spoken more words tonight than he had in a month. Toby had held Maggie's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Eli had said thank you and meant it in a way Joe hadn't heard him mean anything in 20 months. And Joe had felt something warm, something dangerous, something he'd sworn he'd never feel again, because feeling meant losing, and losing meant pain, and he couldn't survive any more pain. Stop it, he told himself. She's just being kind. It's Christmas. It's frontier law. It doesn't mean anything. But even as he thought it, he knew he was lying. Because the way Maggie looked at his sons wasn't just kindness. It was hunger. It was longing. It was a woman who'd made baby clothes for children she'd never have finally getting to hold someone else's children, and finding that it filled a hole she'd been carrying for years. And the way his sons looked at her? Don't, Joe told himself. Don't even think it. Clara's been dead 20 months. You don't get to want things. You don't get to hope. You just survive. That's all. You just survive. The fire burned low. Joe closed his eyes and dreamed of Clara. She was standing in their kitchen, wearing her blue dress, the one she wore when they got married. She was smiling at him. That smile that always made him feel like the luckiest man alive. Joe, she said. Oh, Joe, what are you so afraid of? Losing again. Hurting again. I can't do it, Clara. I can't. Yes, you can. You're stronger than you know. I'm not. I've been barely holding on. The boys, they need more than I can give them. I'm failing them, Clara. Every day I'm failing them. Then stop failing them. Her smile turned sad. Stop being so scared that you forget how to live. I didn't die so you could join me early. I died so you could go on, so you could raise our sons, so you could love again. I don't want to love again. I know. She stepped closer, touched his face. Her hand was warm. Real. But you will. And when you do, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't run from it. Don't hide. Don't be so scared of losing that you forget how to hold on. Clara. Promise me, Joe. I promise. She smiled one last time. Then she was gone. Joe woke with a jolt. The fire had burned down to embers. The cabin was dark, silent. The storm outside had finally quieted. But something had woken him. A sound. From above. From the loft. Crying. Quiet. Muffled. Like someone trying desperately not to be heard. Maggie. Joe lay still, listening, aching. 4 years alone. Christmas Eve. A cabin full of children she'd never have. A family she'd gotten to pretend was hers for one night. And come morning they'd leave, and she'd be alone again. Joe understood that kind of loneliness, had lived in it, was still living in it. The crying stopped. Silence returned. Joe stared at the ceiling and thought about promises made to dead wives and lights in windows, and women who carved birds to survive winters that never seemed to end. And he thought about his sons, their faces tonight, their smiles, their laughter, the way they'd come alive around this stranger in a way they hadn't come alive since Clara died. What am I gonna do, Clara? What am I supposed to do? No answer came. Just the wind dying down outside, and the fire crackling, and the weight of morning coming too fast. Tomorrow the storm would clear. Tomorrow he'd have to make a choice. Stay or go. Hope or survive. Live or merely exist. Joe Callahan closed his eyes and waited for dawn, and tried not to think about the woman in the loft who'd saved his sons and broken something open in him that he'd thought was dead. Morning would come. Morning always came, and when it did, nothing would ever be the same. Morning light crept through the window slow and golden. Joe woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. Real bacon. He couldn't remember the last time he'd smelled bacon that wasn't burned black. He sat up, careful. His shoulder ached, but the sharp pain had dulled to something bearable. Maggie's bandaging had held through the night. The boys were still asleep. All three tangled together in Maggie's bed. Peaceful. Safe. He watched them for a long moment. Tried to remember the last time they'd slept like that. Couldn't. Coffee's ready. Maggie's voice. Quiet. Not wanting to wake the children. Joe turned. She stood by the stove. Hair still pulled back. Same practical dress. But something different in her face this morning. Something guarded that hadn't been there last night. She'd been crying. He'd heard her. And now she was building walls. He understood. He'd built his own walls high enough. Thank you. He took the cup she offered. Their fingers didn't touch this time. Both careful. Both knowing something had shifted in the night. Storms passed. Maggie looked at the window. Sky's clearing. You should be able to get to town by afternoon if you leave soon. There it was. The dismissal wrapped in practicality. She was pushing them out before they could leave on their own, protecting herself. About last night, Joe started. Nothing happened last night. Her voice was firm. You needed shelter. I had shelter, that's all. That ain't what I meant. I know what you meant. She finally looked at him. And I'm telling you it don't matter. You got boys to raise, a ranch to run, a life to get back to. And I got my own life here, such as it is. Joe wanted to argue, wanted to say something, but what? He barely knew this woman. One night didn't change anything, couldn't change anything. Could it? Miss Maggie Toby's voice. Sleep rough and confused. Maggie's face transformed. That guarded look melted into something soft and warm. Morning, little one. Hungry. Toby nodded, climbed out of bed, walked straight to Maggie and wrapped his arms around her waist like he'd been doing it his whole life. Joe's chest tightened. Maggie froze for just a heartbeat. Then her hand came down gentle on Toby's hair. Breakfast is almost ready. Go wake your brothers. Toby ran back to the bed, started jumping on his brothers. Eli groaned. Nate threw a pillow. Normal sounds. Happy sounds. Sounds Joe hadn't heard in 20 months. They like you. Joe's voice came out rough. Children like anyone who feeds them. That ain't true, and you know it. Maggie turned back to the stove. Didn't answer. Breakfast was quiet, but not uncomfortable. The boys ate everything Maggie put in front of them. Asked for seconds. Got them. Eli kept watching Maggie with those two old eyes. Calculating. Thinking. Joe knew that look. His eldest was working something out in his head. Nate talked. Actually talked. About the carved birds. About wanting to learn. About maybe carving something for Mama's grave. She'd like that, Joe said. A bird for her headstone. Miss Maggie could teach me. Couldn't you, Miss Maggie? The silence stretched. We're leaving today, Nate. Joe's voice was gentle but firm. Soon as I can get the wagon sorted. Miss Maggie's got her own life to live. But no buts. Nate's face crumpled. Just for a second. Then he smoothed it out, swallowed whatever he was feeling, went back to eating. Joe hated himself for putting that look on his son's face, but what choice did he have? They couldn't stay here. This wasn't their home. Maggie wasn't anything to them. I'll need help with the wagon, Joe said. Axles broke clean through. You know anyone nearby who might have a spare, huh? Walter Prescott, 3 miles east. Maggie was washing dishes, not looking at him. He's got equipment, tools. Probably has an axle that'll fit or can rig something temporary. Much obliged. I can show you the way. Eli stood up. I remember landmarks from when we came in. You remember landmarks from inside a blizzard? Yes, sir. Mama always said I had good eyes. Mama? Clara. The name hung in the air between them all. She was right, Joe said finally. You do have good eyes. After breakfast, Joe pulled on his coat. His shoulder protested but held. Maggie watched him struggle with the buttons. Didn't offer to help. That wall was up solid now. Boys mind, Miss Maggie, while I'm gone. Eli, you're in charge. Yes, sir. I mean it. Best behavior. Papa. Eli's voice was serious. I know. Joe nodded. Looked at Maggie one last time. Wanted to say something. Thank you. I'm sorry. I heard you crying. I understand. I'll be back before dark, he said instead. Take the main trail east. You'll see the Prescott place once you clear the ridge. Joe left. The cold hit him hard, but the wind was gone. Blue sky stretched overhead. Beautiful. Peaceful. Hard to believe last night's storm had almost killed them. He walked toward the ridge, each step taking him further from the cabin. From Maggie. From whatever had started to form there in the firelight. This is right, he told himself. This is how it has to be. But his feet felt heavy, and his chest felt hollow, and somewhere behind him, his sons were laughing at something Maggie said. He didn't look back. Back in the cabin, Maggie tried to keep busy. Dishes, sweeping, anything to avoid thinking about how quiet the place would be once they left. Toby followed her everywhere, like a duckling following its mother. Miss Maggie, what's this? That's dried sage, for cooking. What's this? Lavender, for making things smell nice. What's this? Toby. Eli's voice was sharp. Stop pestering her. He ain't pestering. Maggie surprised herself with the words. I don't mind questions. Been a long time since anyone asked me anything. Toby beamed. See, Eli? She likes me. Everyone likes you. You're impossible not to like. Mama said that too. Toby's voice went soft. She said I was her sunshine boy. Said I made everyone smile, even when they didn't want to. Maggie's heart cracked open a little more. Your mama was right. She knelt down to Toby's level. You are a sunshine boy. Don't ever let anyone tell you different. Miss Maggie. Nate's quiet voice from across the room. Can you really teach me to carve? Maggie looked at him. This silent boy who'd barely spoken yesterday. now asking her for something, trusting her with something. "Come here." Nate crossed the room, sat beside her. Maggie pulled out her carving tools. Simple things. A small knife, a piece of soft pine, sandpaper worn smooth from use. First rule of carving. She put the knife in his hand, adjusted his grip. You don't force the wood, you let it tell you what it wants to be. How does wood talk? With its grain, its knots, its soft spots and hard spots. You feel it as you work. Let your hands listen. Nate's brow furrowed in concentration. He made a small cut, then another. Like this. Exactly like that. Eli watched from across the room, arms crossed, that calculating look still on his face. "Miss Maggie." His voice was careful. "How come you live out here alone?" "Eli." Nate looked up. "That ain't polite." "I ain't trying to be polite. I'm trying to understand." Maggie set down her own carving, looked at this boy who was trying so hard to be a man. "What do you want to understand?" "You're smart. You're trained. You could live anywhere. Why here? Why alone?" "Because this is where my husband's buried. Because I made a promise to stay." "Even though you're lonely." "Eli." Nate's voice was sharper now. "It's all right." Maggie held up a hand. "He's asking fair questions." She looked at Eli. Really looked. "Yes, even though I'm lonely. Sometimes we keep promises even when they hurt. Even when they stop making sense. Because a promise is a promise, and breaking it means letting go. And letting go means—" She couldn't finish. "Means admitting they're really gone," Eli said softly. "Means moving on. And moving on feels like betraying them." Maggie stared at him. This 11-year-old boy who understood grief better than most grown men. "How do you know that?" "Because Papa's the same way." Eli's voice was bitter. "Won't move Mama's things, won't say her name, won't let any of us move on because he can't move on himself." "Eli." Nate set down his carving. "That ain't fair." "It's true, though. You know it's true. We've been living in a graveyard for 20 months, eating burned food, wearing torn clothes, watching Papa disappear into himself more every day. And we're supposed to just accept it. Supposed to just wait until he decides to start living again, if he ever does." The words hung in the air. Angry, true, devastating. "Your Papa loves you." Maggie's voice was gentle. "Any fool can see that." "Love ain't enough." Eli's voice cracked. "Mama loved us too. And she died anyway. And now it's like Papa's trying to die too. Just slower. And he's taking us with him." Toby started crying, silent tears streaming down his face. Maggie gathered him up without thinking, held him against her chest, made soothing sounds. "Shh, shh, it's all right." "It ain't all right." Eli's voice was breaking now. "Nothing's been all right for 20 months, and I'm tired, Miss Maggie. I'm so tired of pretending it's going to get better when it just keeps getting worse." Maggie opened her arm, an invitation. Eli hesitated. 11 years old, trying to be a man, needing to be a child. He crossed the room, let her pull him close. Nate joined them without being asked. And there, in that small cabin, Maggie held 3 boys who weren't hers and let them cry out grief they'd been swallowing for 20 months. Joe found the Prescott place easy enough. Walter Prescott was 60 if he was a day. Weathered face, strong hands, eyes that missed nothing. "Callahan, right? Got the spread over by Bitter Creek?" "Yes, sir." "Heard about your wife. Sorry for your loss." Joe nodded. He'd learned to accept condolences without falling apart. It had taken months. "Axle broke in the storm. Miss Maggie said you might have something I could use." "Maggie Holloway." Walter's eyebrows rose. "You stayed at her place." "Storm didn't give us much choice." "No, I reckon it didn't." Walter studied him. "Good woman, Maggie. Deserves better than that empty cabin." Seems like she's doing all right. Seems like. But seeming and being ain't the same thing. 4 winters alone. No family, no children. Just those birds she carves, and the lamp in her window, and waiting for something that ain't never coming. What's she waiting for? Walter shrugged. Same thing we're all waiting for, I suppose. Something to make the loneliness worth enduring. They found an axle that would work. Temporary fix, but good enough to get Joe to town. Walter helped him load it onto a small cart. Take my horse, Walter said. Bring her back when you can. I'm obliged. You think about what I said, about Maggie. I don't know what you want me to think. I want you to think about a good woman alone in a cabin on Christmas Day. And 3 boys who probably need a mother. And a man who looks like he's been dead inside for a long time, but might just be starting to wake up. Joe's jaw tightened. You don't know anything about me. I know grief when I see it. I know running when I see it. And I know second chances don't come around often in this life. When they do, only a fool lets them pass. Joe climbed onto the cart, didn't look back. But Walter's words followed him all the way to Maggie's cabin. He heard crying before he reached the door. His heart stopped. Something wrong with the boys. Someone hurt. Someone! He burst through the door and stopped. Maggie sat on the floor, all 3 boys around her. Not crying anymore. Laughing. Maggie was teaching them some kind of clapping game. Her hands moved fast. The boys tried to keep up. Failed. Laughed harder. Papa! Toby scrambled up. Miss Maggie taught us a game, watch? He tried to show Joe. Got the rhythm wrong. Laughed at himself. Very impressive. Joe's voice came out strange, thick. Maggie stood. Brushed off her dress. That guarded look was back, but not as strong. Something had shifted while he was gone. You got the axle. Temporary fix. Should get us to town. Good, that's good. The words said one thing. Her eyes said another. Miss Maggie, Nate said. Can we stay for lunch before we go, please? Joe should say no. Should get them moving. Should put distance between his family and this woman before something happened that couldn't be undone. Just lunch, he said instead. Maggie's face lit up, just for a second. Then controlled again. I'll see what I can put together. Lunch stretched into afternoon. Joe told himself they needed to let the horses rest. Told himself the axle needed checking. Told himself 100 lies that all meant the same thing. He didn't want to leave. His boys didn't want to leave. And Maggie, for all her talk about them having lives to get back to, didn't seem to want them to leave either. They sat around her table. Talked, really talked, about nothing important, about everything important. Maggie told them about Philadelphia, about her training, about meeting her husband Robert in the hospital where she worked. He was the handsomest man I'd ever seen, she said, and the sickest. Typhoid nearly killed him the first time. I nursed him back. He said he'd love me forever for saving his life. Did he? Toby asked. Love you forever. He did, right up until the typhoid came back and finished what it started. That's sad. It is, but I had him for 6 years. Some folks don't get that much. Mama and Papa had 12 years, Eli said. Was it enough, Papa? Joe's throat closed. 12 years. 12 years of Clara's laugh. Clara's cooking. Clara's warmth beside him every night. 12 years of building a life, a family, a future. No. His voice came out rough. It wasn't nearly enough. But you're glad you had them, even though it hurts now. Yes. Joe looked at his son. Even though it hurts, even though losing her nearly killed me, I wouldn't trade those 12 years for anything. Then why do you act like you would? Eli's voice was quiet, challenging. Why do you act like losing Mama means you have to lose everything? Like being happy again means betraying her. The question hung in the air. Joe couldn't answer. Mama left you a letter. Eli reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded paper. I found it. In her Bible, weeks ago. I've been trying to find the right time to give it to you, but there wasn't ever a right time. Joe stared at the paper. Clara's handwriting on the outside. For Joe. When you're ready. His hands shook as he took it. I didn't read it, Eli said. But I know what it says. Mama was always telling us things, preparing us, like she knew she wasn't going to make it. Joe couldn't speak, couldn't move. Read it, Papa. Toby's small voice. Read what Mama wrote. Joe looked at Maggie. She nodded once. Permission, understanding, support. He unfolded the letter. My dearest Joe. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry. I fought as hard as I could, but some fights can't be won. Don't blame yourself. Don't blame the baby. Don't blame God. Sometimes people just die, and the ones left behind have to figure out how to keep living. That's what I need you to do, Joe. Keep living. Not just surviving. Living. I know you. I know how you love. All or nothing. When you give your heart, you give all of it. That's what I loved most about you. But it's also what scares me now. Because I know when I'm gone, you'll want to close up that heart forever. Lock it away so nothing can hurt you again. Don't do that. Please. For me. For our boys. They need a father who's present, who laughs, who loves. They need to see that happiness is possible, even after loss. They need to know that moving forward isn't betrayal. It's survival. It's honoring the life we built by continuing to build. And Joe, if you find someone who makes you smile, someone who makes the boys smile, don't you dare run from it. Don't you dare tell yourself you don't deserve it. You deserve every happiness in this world. I want that for you. I need that for you. Let love in again. For me. Promise me. All my love forever and always. Clara. Joe couldn't see. Tears blurred everything. He pressed the letter against his chest and broke. 20 months of holding it together. 20 months of being strong. 20 months of swallowing grief so his boys wouldn't see him fall apart. It all came out now. He didn't know who reached him first. Didn't care. Small arms wrapped around him. And then larger arms. Eli. Nate. Toby. All of them holding him while he sobbed. And then another touch. Gentle. On his shoulder. Maggie. She loved you. Her voice was soft. She still does. And she's right, Joe. You deserve happiness. We all do. Joe looked up at her through his tears. She was crying too. This strong frontier woman who'd survived 4 years alone. Crying for a man she'd known less than 2 days. I don't know how. His voice broke. I don't know how to let go. You don't have to let go. Maggie knelt beside him. You just have to hold on to something else too. Grief and hope can exist together. Sorrow and joy can share the same heart. That's what being human means. Are you speaking from experience? I'm speaking from survival. She smiled through her tears. 4 years I've been holding on to Robert's memory with both hands. So tight there wasn't room for anything else. But last night holding your boys, singing them to sleep, I felt something I haven't felt in years. What? Possibility. She wiped her eyes. The possibility that maybe I don't have to die alone. That maybe there's still time for something. The cabin was silent. 4 people. 2 broken adults. 3 wounded children. All of them looking at each other in the fading afternoon light. Papa. Toby's voice was hopeful. Scared. What are we going to do? Joe looked at his sons. At Maggie. At the letter in his hands. Let love in again. For me. Promise me. I don't know. he said honestly. I don't know what we're gonna do, but I know we ain't leaving today. Toby whooped. Nate smiled. Eli's shoulders dropped with relief. And Maggie. Maggie looked at Joe with something in her eyes that terrified him and drew him in equal measure. You can stay, she said. Long as you need. And what about what you need? She didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. Outside, the sun was setting. Christmas Day, fading into Christmas night. Joe Callahan sat in a stranger's cabin with his dead wife's blessing in his hand and his living sons around him and a woman who might just be his second chance, looking at him like she was afraid to hope. He was afraid too. But for the first time in 20 months, he was more afraid of running than staying. And that he realized was how healing began. Not with big decisions, not with grand declarations, just with choosing to stay one more night, and then maybe another, and then maybe forever. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight there was warmth and food, and his sons laughing, and a woman whose smile made his heart remember what it felt like to beat. Tonight that was enough. Tonight that was everything. 3 days passed like a dream Joe didn't want to wake from. He fixed things around Maggie's cabin. The loose shutter, the squeaky door hinge, the wobbly table leg. Small repairs that gave him reason to stay another hour, then another day. The boys bloomed like flowers after rain. Nate carved his first bird, rough and lopsided, but recognizable. He held it up with shaking hands and tears in his eyes. For Mama's grave, he whispered, when we go home. Maggie hugged him so tight he squeaked. Eli dropped his walls piece by piece, started talking about things he'd kept locked inside for 20 months, about finding Clara on the floor, about the blood, about holding her hand while she died because Joe was in town getting the doctor who came too late. I never told Papa, Eli said one evening. He doesn't know I was there, that I saw everything. Maggie held him while he shook. Didn't say anything, just held him. Toby attached himself to Maggie like a shadow, followed her everywhere, helped her cook, helped her clean, called her Miss Maggie 40 times a day just to hear her answer. And Joe watched it all, watched his sons healing, watched Maggie coming alive, watched something building between all of them that felt fragile and precious and terrifying. On the third night after the boys were asleep, Joe and Maggie sat by the fire, not touching, but close, closer than strangers should be. I have to take them home tomorrow. The words fell like stones in still water. Maggie didn't look at him. I know. The ranch needs tending, livestock, fences, can't leave it much longer. I know. This isn't... Joe struggled for words. This can't be. I know, Joe. Her voice was tired, resigned. You don't have to explain. You have a life. I have mine. The storm brought us together. Now it's over. That's how these things go. Is it? She finally looked at him. Isn't it? Joe wanted to say no. Wanted to say he'd felt more alive in 3 days than he had in 20 months. Wanted to say his sons needed her. He needed her. That leaving felt like tearing out his own heart. But Clara's letter burned in his pocket. Let love in again. Easy words to write. Hard words to live. What if I came back? The words escaped before he could stop them. To visit. To check on you. Would that be... Would you want that? Maggie's hands trembled in her lap. What are you asking me, Joe? I don't know. I don't know what I'm asking. I just know that riding away from here tomorrow feels wrong. Feels like making the biggest mistake of my life. Then don't. Don't what? Don't ride away. She turned to face him fully. Stay. All of you. Stay here. We can figure out the rest as we go. Maggie, I can't just abandon my ranch. Everything I built with Clara? I'm not asking you to abandon anything. I'm asking you to choose something new. The fire crackled between them. Joe thought about his ranch, the house where Clara died, the grave on the hill where she lay beside their baby daughter. 20 months of memories, 12 years of building a life. And then he thought about Maggie, this cabin, his sons laughing for the first time in almost 2 years. The feeling of possibility he'd forgotten existed. I need time. His voice came out hoarse. To think, to figure out what's right. Time. Maggie's voice went flat. Of course. Take all the time you need. She stood, walked to the loft ladder. Maggie, wait. She stopped, but didn't turn around. I'm not running. I promise. I spent 20 months making bad decisions. I don't want this to be another one. I understand. She climbed the ladder, disappeared into the loft. Joe sat alone by the dying fire. He'd handled that wrong. He knew he'd handled that wrong. But what was the right way? How did a man who'd loved one woman, his whole adult life, learn to love another? How did he honor the past while reaching for the future? Clara's letter crinkled in his pocket. Let love in again. For me. Promise me. I'm trying, Joe whispered to the empty room. I'm trying, Clara, but I don't know how. Morning came cold and gray. Joe woke the boys early, told them to pack their things, watched their faces crumple one by one. But Papa, Toby's voice broke. I don't want to go. I know, son, but we have to. Why? Why can't we stay here? Miss Maggie wants us to stay. I know she does. It's complicated. That's what grown-ups say when they're scared. Joe froze, looked at his 5-year-old son. The boy stared back with Clara's eyes, Clara's stubbornness, Clara's ability to see right through him. You're right. Joe knelt down. I am scared. But sometimes we have to do hard things even when we're scared. Mama said being brave means being scared and doing it anyway. Your mama was very wise. Then be brave, Papa. Stay with Miss Maggie. Let us stay. Joe couldn't answer. His throat had closed completely. Eli appeared in the doorway. His face was blank, controlled. That terrible mask he'd learned to wear. Wagon's ready. His voice was flat. We should go before the weather turns. Maggie came down from the loft. She'd been crying. Joe could see it in her red-rimmed eyes, the puffiness around them. But her voice was steady. I made biscuits for the road, and some dried meat. Should last you till you get home. Thank you. Joe's voice sounded wrong. Too formal. Too distant. Thank you for your hospitality, Miss Maggie. Eli's voice was cold, angry, not at her, at Joe. We won't forget your kindness. Maggie knelt in front of the boys, hugged each one. Toby clung to her and wouldn't let go. I don't want to leave you. His voice was muffled against her shoulder. Please don't make us leave you. Shh. Maggie stroked his hair. It's going to be all right. You'll see. Everything's going to be all right. But her voice cracked on the last word. She finally peeled Toby off, handed him to Joe, stood up straight. That frontier toughness back in place. Safe travels, Mr. Callahan. Mr. Callahan. Not Joe. Not anymore. Maggie. You should go. Storm's coming. I can feel it in my bones. She was right. Joe could feel it too. The pressure dropping, the cold deepening, another blizzard brewing. Will you be all right alone out here? I've been alone 4 years. I know how to survive. But surviving wasn't living. Joe knew that better than anyone. He loaded the boys into the wagon, climbed up onto the seat, took the reins in hands that didn't want to cooperate. Maggie stood in her doorway, arms wrapped around herself, face carefully blank. Joe looked at her, tried to memorize everything, the way she stood, the color of her hair in the gray morning light, the strength in her shoulders, the loneliness in her eyes. I'll come back, he said. When I figure things out, I'll come back. Maggie nodded once, didn't speak. Joe snapped the reins. The horses moved. Behind him, Toby started crying. Nate turned to watch Maggie until she disappeared around the bend. Eli sat rigid beside Joe, not looking back, not speaking. They rode in silence for an hour. The ranch house appeared like a ghost from Joe's past. Familiar, hated, home. He'd been avoiding it for 3 days, avoiding the memories, avoiding Clara's presence in every corner, avoiding the grave on the hill. Now he had to face it all. "Boys, get inside. Start a fire. I'll tend the horses." Eli jumped down without a word, grabbed his brothers, disappeared into the house. Joe took his time with the horses, brushed them down, fed them, checked their hooves, anything to delay going inside. But he couldn't delay forever. The house was cold. Eli had started a fire, but it hadn't caught properly. Smoke filled the room instead of warmth. "Let me." Joe adjusted the logs, got the fire going right. The boys sat at the table, silent, miserable, not looking at him. "I'll make supper." He went to the stove, found potatoes, carrots, some dried meat, started cooking, the way he'd been cooking for 20 months, without care, without attention. The potatoes burned. He scraped them into a bowl anyway, set the food on the table. Nobody ate. "You need to eat." "I ain't hungry." Eli's voice was sharp, angry. "Me neither." Nate stared at his plate. Toby just shook his head, tears streaming down his face again. Joe sat heavily in his chair. Clara's chair used to be across from him. He'd left it empty for 20 months, a shrine to a dead woman while his living son starved for attention. "I know you're angry." "We ain't angry, Papa." Eli's voice dripped with bitterness. "We're used to it. Used to you choosing ghosts over us. Used to you being too scared to move forward. Used to waiting for you to wake up and realize we're still here." "Eli." "No, I'm done pretending." The boy stood up. "Mama's dead. She's been dead for 20 months. And you've been dead too. Just walking around like a corpse, burning food, forgetting to fix things, letting this house fall apart while you visit her grave every day like she might come back if you just sit there long enough. That ain't fair." "Fair." Eli laughed, bitter, broken. "You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when I held Mama's hand while she bled to death? Was it fair when I had to wash the blood off the floor before Toby saw? Was it fair when you came home with the doctor and just collapsed while I had to take care of everything?" Joe couldn't breathe. "You didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know you were there." "Of course you didn't know. You don't know anything anymore. You're too busy being dead to notice we're still alive." Eli ran, out the door, into the cold. "Eli!" Joe jumped up. "Let him go." Nate's quiet voice stopped him. "He needs to run it out. He's been holding that in for 20 months. Joe sank back into his chair. His heart was pounding. His hands were shaking. His 11-year-old son had held Clara's hand while she died, had washed her blood off the floor, had carried that alone for 20 months while Joe wallowed in grief. What kind of father was he, Papa? Toby's small hand found his. "Papa, don't be sad. Eli didn't mean it." Yes, he did. And he was right. "He's just hurt. We're all hurt. But Miss Maggie made it better. Why did we have to leave her? Because..." Joe didn't have an answer, didn't have excuses anymore. "Because I was scared." Of what? Of loving someone again. Of losing them. Of letting go of your mama. "But Miss Maggie ain't asking you to let go of Mama." Toby's voice was so reasonable, so clear. "She's just asking you to hold her too. Your heart's big enough, Papa. Mama always said so. She said you had the biggest heart of any man she knew." Out of the mouths of babes. Joe pulled his youngest close, breathed in the smell of him, sweat and dirt and childhood and hope. "When did you get so smart? Mama taught me, and Miss Maggie reminded me." An hour later, Eli came back, snow in his hair, face red from cold and crying. He stood in the doorway looking at Joe with eyes that expected punishment. "Come here," Joe said. Eli approached slowly, braced for anger. Joe pulled him into a hug so fierce the boy gasped. "I'm sorry." Joe's voice broke. "God, Eli, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I should have known. I should have asked. I should have been there for you, and I wasn't, and I'm sorry." Eli stood rigid for a moment, then collapsed against his father, sobbing. "I see her every night," Eli choked out. "In my dreams. The blood. Her face. The way she looked at me when she knew she was dying. She told me to take care of you. Made me promise. But I don't know how, Papa. I'm just a kid. I don't know how to take care of anyone." "You shouldn't have to." Joe held him tighter. "That was never your job. I'm the father. I'm the one who should be taking care of you. And I failed. I've been failing for 20 months. What do we do now?" Joe pulled back, looked at all three of his sons. Eli with his two old eyes, Nate with his quiet pain, Toby with his desperate hope. "We fix it," Joe said. "Together, we fix everything I broke." "Does that mean we can go back to Miss Maggie?" "Not yet." Joe held up a hand before the protests could start. "First we do this right. I need to talk to the preacher, to the neighbors. Need to make sure this is proper. Maggie deserves better than a man sneaking around in the night. She deserves to be courted, honored, chosen in the light of day." "You mean it?" Eli's voice was cautious, afraid to hope. "I mean it. Your mama gave me permission. It's right there in her letter. She wanted me to find happiness again. She wanted you boys to have a family again, and I've been too scared to accept that gift." "But you're not scared anymore." Joe laughed. It surprised him. First real laugh in 20 months. "Son, I'm terrified. But I'm more terrified of spending the rest of my life like I've spent the last 20 months. And I'm most terrified of taking you boys down with me." That night, for the first time since Clara died, Joe told stories at bedtime. Stories about Clara. Happy memories. The time she chased a chicken through the house. The time she burned the Christmas goose so bad they ate beans instead. The time she laughed so hard at one of Joe's jokes, she snorted milk out her nose. The boys laughed, really laughed. Tears and laughter mixed together in the way that healing required. "Papa," Toby said as sleep claimed him, "I think Mama would like Miss Maggie." Yeah, they're both strong and kind, and they both love us." Joe kissed his forehead. "I think you're right." He went to bed that night with something he hadn't felt in 20 months. Hope. Tomorrow he'd start making things right. Talk to the preacher, visit the neighbors, begin courting Maggie properly. He fell asleep smiling, and woke to screaming. Joe shot up in bed, heart pounding. The screams were coming from the loft, from the boys. He scrambled up the ladder so fast he nearly fell. "What? What's wrong?" Eli stood at the small window, face white with terror. "Papa, Toby's gone." "What?" "He's not in bed. His boots are gone. His coat's gone. He left." No. Joe looked out the window. The blizzard Maggie had predicted had arrived with a vengeance. Snow falling so thick he couldn't see the barn 10 feet away. And somewhere out there, his 5-year-old son. Which way? Joe was already climbing down the ladder. Which way would he go? Miss Maggie's. Nate's voice was small, terrified. He wanted to go back. He must have snuck out. 15 miles. In a blizzard. In the dark. A 5-year-old boy who weighed nothing against wind that could knock down a grown man. Joe grabbed his coat, his boots, his hat. "Stay here." His voice was steady, even though his hands shook. "Keep the fire going. Don't leave this house for any reason." "Papa, let me come." Eli grabbed his arm. "You need help. I need you here, with your brother. Can you do that?" Eli nodded, face pale but determined. Joe ran into the storm. The cold hit him like a physical blow. Wind screamed around him, snow blinded him. He couldn't see anything. Couldn't hear anything except the howling white death. Toby. Toby. Nothing. He ran toward where Maggie's cabin would be. Knew the direction by instinct. By the hundreds of times he'd looked that way in the past 3 days. But instinct wasn't enough in a blizzard. Everything looked the same. White on white on white. Toby. His voice was swallowed by the wind. He pushed forward, one step, then another, then another. How far had Toby gotten? How long had he been gone? An hour, too. In this cold, a child that small would freeze in less than an hour. God, please, not again. He couldn't bury another child. Couldn't survive losing Toby. It would destroy him. Destroy what was left of his family. Toby! Something caught his eye. A flash of color against all that white. He ran toward it, stumbled, fell, got up, kept running. There. A small body curled in the snow. Not moving. Joe fell to his knees beside his son, pulled Toby against his chest. The boy was cold. So cold. Lips blue. Face white. But breathing. Barely. Still breathing. Toby. Toby, wake up. Stay with me. The boy's eyes fluttered. Papa. I'm here. I've got you. Wanted to find Miss Maggie. Tell her we're coming back. I know, son. I know. But you can't sleep now. You have to stay awake. Joe stripped off his coat, wrapped Toby in it, started walking. But which way? He'd lost all sense of direction in the storm. The ranch could be anywhere. Maggie's cabin could be anywhere. He was blind and his son was dying, and God wasn't answering. Then he saw it. A light. Faint. Golden. Half a mile away. Maybe less. The same light that had saved them on Christmas Eve. Maggie's lamp. Joe ran. He didn't feel the cold anymore. Didn't feel his burning lungs or his screaming muscles. Only felt Toby's small body against his chest. Only saw that light growing closer. The cabin materialized from the storm. Joe kicked the door open, stumbled inside. Maggie screamed. Then saw Toby. Then moved. Put him by the fire. Get those wet clothes off. Now! She was already pulling quilts from the chest. Already heating water. Already doing everything she'd done 4 days ago when they first arrived. Joe stripped Toby's frozen clothes, wrapped him in quilts, rubbed his hands, his feet, his ears. He was out there too long. Maggie's voice was tight, controlled, professional. The hypothermia's bad. We need to warm him slowly. Too fast and his heart could stop. What do I do? Hold him. Talk to him. Keep him awake. Joe pulled Toby against his chest, skin to skin beneath the quilts. His body heat the only thing standing between his son and death. Toby. Toby, stay with me. Papa. The boy's voice was so weak. Did I find her? Yeah, son. You found her. You found Miss Maggie. Tell her. Tell her we're staying. Papa promised. You can tell her yourself. When you're warm. When you're better. Promise? I promise. Toby's eyes closed. No. Joe shook him gently. No, Toby, stay awake. Stay with me. Let him sleep. Maggie's hand on Joe's shoulder. He's warm enough now. Sleep is good. Sleep means his body's healing. Joe looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. I almost lost him. Because I was too scared to stay. Because I made the wrong choice. You made the choice you thought was right. It wasn't right. Leaving you wasn't right. Leaving this place wasn't right. I knew it when I drove away, and I did it anyway." Maggie knelt beside him, touched Toby's forehead, checked his pulse. "He's going to be fine. Cold, but no frostbite. You got to him in time." "Barely. Barely's enough." She looked at Joe. "Barely's always enough." Joe reached out, took her hand, held it against his chest. "I'm not leaving again. You hear me? Whatever happens, however we figure this out, I'm not leaving. The boys aren't leaving. If you'll have us." "Joe, I know it's complicated. I know there's things to work out, the ranch, the neighbors, what people will say. But I don't care about any of that anymore. I care about you. I care about my boys. I care about building something good from all this broken." Maggie's eyes filled with tears. "I've been alone 4 years." Her voice shook. 4 years of carving birds and lighting lamps and waiting for something I didn't think would ever come. And then you crashed through my door on Christmas Eve and everything changed. And when you left, it felt like dying all over again. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just stay. Can you do that? Can you stay?" Joe looked at his son sleeping against his chest, at this woman kneeling beside him, at the light in the window that had saved them twice now. "Yeah," he said, "I can stay." Outside, the storm raged. Inside, something new was beginning. Something built on loss and hope, and the stubborn refusal to die alone. Joe held his son, held Maggie's hand, and let himself believe that maybe possibly after everything happiness was still possible. The fire crackled, Toby breathed, and Joe Callahan, who'd been dead for 20 months, finally started to live again. Toby woke 3 hours later. His first word was, "Mama." His second was Maggie. Joe held him close while the boy cried out the fear and cold and desperate hope that had driven him into the storm. Maggie sat beside them, one hand on Toby's back, the other wiping her own tears. "I wanted to tell you." Toby's voice was hoarse, broken. "Wanted to tell you we're coming back. Papa promised." "I know, sweetheart." Maggie kissed his forehead. "I know. You ain't mad. I'm scared. Being scared ain't the same as being mad. Papa was scared too. I heard him calling my name. He sounded like he was gonna break." Joe's throat closed. He had been breaking. Still was. Might never stop. "Your papa loves you," Maggie said softly. "More than you know." "I know." Toby looked up at Joe with those clear eyes. Clara's eyes. "That's why he's gonna marry you. Right, Papa?" The cabin went silent. Joe looked at Maggie. She looked back at him. Neither breathed. "Toby," Joe said carefully. "That's not something we've talked about. But you're gonna. I can tell. The way you look at her, the way she looks at you. It's like how you used to look at Mama, before she got sick." Out of the mouths of babes. "We need to get your brothers." Joe changed the subject. Coward's way out, but he took it. "They're at the ranch. Worried sick about you." "I'll go." Maggie stood. "Storm's dying down. I know a shortcut." "You can't go alone." "I've survived 4 winters alone, Joe. I reckon I can manage 3 miles. I'm coming with you." "And leave Toby." They stared at each other. The impossible choice. Stay with the sick child. Go for the other children. Neither option right. Neither option safe. "I'll be fine." Toby's small voice. "I'll stay by the fire. Keep warm. You can lock the door." "Absolutely not." Joe's voice was firm. "You almost died tonight. I'm not leaving you alone." "Then Maggie goes." Toby looked at her. "Please. Eli and Nate are probably real scared. They need to know I'm okay." Maggie knelt beside him. "You sure you'll be all right?" "I got Papa. And the fire, and all them quilts." The boy managed a weak smile. "I'm tough. Mama always said so." Maggie looked at Joe, asking permission, asking for trust. Be careful." Joe's voice was rough. "Please." "Always am." She pulled on her coat, her boots, wrapped a scarf around her face. At the door, she turned back. "Joe." "Yeah. When I get back with your boys, we're gonna talk, really talk, about everything. No more running, no more being scared. You understand?" "I understand." She nodded once, disappeared into the dying storm. Joe held Toby close and waited, counted minutes, prayed to a God he'd stopped believing in 20 months ago. "Papa." "Yeah, son. Are you really gonna marry her?" Joe sighed, looked down at his boy. This child who'd almost died trying to bring two broken people together. "I don't know yet. Marriage is a big thing. Takes time. Takes courting. Takes making sure it's right for everyone." "But you love her, I can tell." "I barely know her, Toby." "You knew Mama for 2 weeks before you proposed, Eli told me. Said you took one look at her at the church social and told your friend you were going to marry that woman." Joe smiled, despite everything. "Your brother talks too much." "Was it true?" "Yeah, it was true, but that was different." "How?" "I was young, stupid. Didn't know anything about loss or fear or how bad loving someone could hurt when they're gone." "But you're glad you loved her anyway. You said so. Even though it hurts." "I did say that." "So why's this different?" Joe had no answer. The boy was right. Clara was right. Everyone was right, except him. "When did 5-year-olds get so smart?" Toby grinned. First real grin since the storm. "Miss Maggie says I'm an old soul. Says I got wisdom beyond my years." "Miss Maggie's right about a lot of things. She's right about you too. I heard her tell Eli you got a good heart. Just scared is all. But fear don't last forever if you're brave enough to face it." Joe pulled his son closer, breathed in the smell of him, alive, warm, safe. "You're gonna be all right, you know that." "Course I am. Got you. Got my brothers. And now we got Miss Maggie too." 2 hours later, the door burst open. Eli and Nate tumbled in, covered in snow faces, red from cold and tears. They ran straight to Toby, dog-piled on top of him, all 3 boys crying and laughing and talking over each other. "You scared us so bad. Don't ever do that again. We thought you were dead." "I'm okay. Papa found me, and Miss Maggie fixed me up." Joe stood back and watched his sons. Together, whole, alive. Maggie appeared in the doorway, snow in her hair, cheeks flushed, breathing hard from the walk. Their eyes met across the room. Everything Joe couldn't say was in that look. Gratitude, fear, hope, the beginning of something he didn't have words for yet. Maggie nodded once, understanding. "I'll make coffee," she said. "Looks like we got a long night ahead." They sat around her table as dawn broke. 5 people who'd been strangers a week ago. Now something else. Something more. "So what happens now?" Eli's voice was careful, guarded, still not quite trusting. Joe looked at Maggie. She looked back. "Now," Joe said slowly, "we figure things out. Together." "What does that mean?" Nate asked. "It means your papa and I need to talk. About the future. About what's best for all of us." "We already know what's best." Toby's voice was matter-of-fact. "We stay here, with you. Papa sells the ranch. We become a family. Easy." "It ain't that easy, son." "Why not?" "Because there's rules, society, what people expect. A man can't just move in with a woman he ain't married to, and marriage ain't something you rush into." "Then marry her." Eli's voice was sharp. "Today, right now. Problem solved." "Eli." "What you love her. She loves you. We love her. She loves us. What else matters?" "There's your mama's memory, the ranch, the graves, everything we built there." "Mama's dead." Eli's voice cracked but held. "She don't need us sitting by her grave every day. She needs us to live. Her letter said so. You read it yourself. A proper courtship takes time. Months. A year maybe. We don't have months. Maggie's quiet voice cut through. Winter's just starting. If you go back to that ranch, you won't make it here again till spring. And I can't. She stopped. Swallowed hard. You can't, what? Joe asked gently. I can't watch you leave again. Her voice shook. I can't go back to carving birds and lighting lamps and waiting for something that ain't coming. Not after this. Not after knowing what it feels like to have a family again. Then come with us. The words were out before Joe could stop them. Come to the ranch. Stay with us while we figure things out. And what will people say? I don't care what people say. You should. I should. Your boys should. This is a small territory. Word travels. A widow living with a widower. They'll call me names Joe. They'll say things about your sons. Let them. Eli stood up, voice fierce. Let them say whatever they want. Anyone talks bad about Miss Maggie, they'll answer to me. And me. Nate stood too. And me. Toby tried to stand, wobbled, sat back down. Soon as I can walk proper again. Maggie's eyes filled with tears. You boys don't know what you're offering. Yes, we do. Eli walked around the table, stood in front of her. We're offering you a family. A real one. Not perfect, not easy, but real. If you want us. If I want you. Maggie laughed through her tears. I've wanted nothing else for 4 years. Prayed for it every night. Lit that lamp hoping someone would come. And then you did. All of you. And it was better than anything I'd dreamed. Then say yes. Toby's voice was pleading. Say yes and come home with us. Maggie looked at Joe, asking, hoping, terrified. The boy makes a good argument, Joe said softly. I ain't one to disagree with my own son. What are you saying? I'm saying come with us. Come to the ranch. We'll figure out the rest as we go. Courtship, wedding, whatever needs doing. But I ain't leaving you here alone, not after everything. People will talk. Let them talk. It ain't proper. Since when do you care about proper? Maggie stared at him. This stubborn man who'd crashed into her life and turned everything upside down. You really mean it. I really mean it. Even though we barely know each other. I know enough. I know you saved my sons twice. I know you made them laugh for the first time in 20 months. I know you held them when they cried. I know you carve birds to survive loneliness. I know you light lamps for strangers who might never come. I know you're the strongest woman I ever met besides my Clara. And I know that walking away from you was the hardest thing I ever did. Joe, I ain't good at speeches, Maggie. Never was. But I know what I feel. And I feel like God or fate or Clara's ghost or something put us in that blizzard on Christmas Eve for a reason. And I'm tired of fighting it. I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired of surviving instead of living. He took her hands, held them tight. So I'm asking, not proposing, not yet, just asking. Will you come with us? Will you give this a chance? Will you let us be your family? Maggie's tears fell freely now. Yes. Her voice was barely a whisper. Yes, Joe. I'll come. The boys erupted, cheering, hugging. Toby tried to stand again and fell right into Maggie's arms. You're really coming. His voice was muffled against her shoulder. I'm really coming. And you'll teach me to carve and make biscuits and sing songs at bedtime. All of it, everything, for as long as you want me. Forever. Toby pulled back, looked at her with absolute certainty. We want you forever. 3 days later, they made the journey to Joe's ranch. Maggie packed light, clothes, tools, her carving knives, a few books, the wedding photograph of her and Robert. You sure you want to bring that? Joe asked. He was my husband, part of my life. I ain't ashamed of that. I didn't mean... I know. She touched his arm. And I'll carry Clara's memory too. Room enough in this family for all our ghosts. The ranch house looked different when they arrived. Smaller somehow. Sadder. The grave on the hill a silent reminder of everything Joe had lost. Maggie stood at the door, not entering. You want to go up first? Pay your respects. Joe shook his head. Together, if that's all right. They climbed the hill. All 5 of them. Snow crunched under their boots. Wind bit at their faces. But they walked together. Clara's grave was simple. A wooden cross. Her name. Dates. Beloved wife and mother. Next to her, the tiny grave of the baby who never got to live. Joe knelt in the snow. Touched the cross. Clara, I brought someone. Someone I think you'd like. Maggie knelt beside him. The boys gathered close. Her name's Margaret. Maggie. She saved our boys. Saved me too, I reckon. I'm gonna court her proper. Marry her if she'll have me. I hope that's all right. I hope you understand. The wind picked up. Swirled snow around them. For a moment Joe could swear he heard Clara's laugh. That bright, joyful sound he'd missed so desperately. I think she approves. Toby's small voice. How do you know? The wind. It sounds happy. Like Mama's laughing. Maggie put her hand on the grave. I'll take care of them, Clara. All of them. I can't replace you. Won't try. But I'll love them best I can. I promise. They stayed there for a long moment. 5 people making peace with the past. Making room for the future. Then Eli spoke. It's cold. Toby shouldn't be out here too long. He's still recovering. Right. Joe stood. Helped Maggie up. Let's go home. Home. The word felt different now. Not a tomb. Not a shrine. A home. A place where people lived and laughed and loved. They walked down the hill together. The courtship began the next day. Joe did everything proper. Introduced Maggie to the neighbors as the woman who saved my family. Brought her to church on Sunday. Let everyone see them together in the light of day. Some folks whispered. Joe heard the words, too soon. Indecent. That woman moved right in. He ignored them all. Mrs. Abigail Hartford, the unofficial queen of local society, approached after the first Sunday service. Mr. Callahan, a word. Joe braced himself. Mrs. Hartford was known for her sharp tongue and sharper judgments. Yes, ma'am? I knew you're Clara. The old woman's voice was crisp. Fine woman. Good mother. Taken too soon. Yes, ma'am. I also know Margaret Holloway. Tended my grandson when the croup took him bad. Saved his life, most likely. Joe waited. What's your intention toward her? I intend to court her proper, ma'am. And if she'll have me, I intend to marry her. And if people talk, let them talk. Won't change anything. Mrs. Hartford studied him, long and hard. Then she nodded. Good answer. Your Clara would approve. She always did hate small-minded gossip. You don't think it's too soon. I think love comes when it comes, and I think a man with 3 motherless boys needs a good woman, and I think a woman who's been alone 4 years deserves a family. Anyone says different, they can take it up with me. She walked away, back straight, head high. Joe watched her go. One ally, the most important one. If Mrs. Hartford approved, others would follow. The winter passed in a blur of small moments. Maggie cooking breakfast, the boys fighting over the last biscuit, Joe fixing things that had been broken for months. Nate finished his carved bird, placed it on Clara's grave with shaking hands. For you, Mama, so you won't be alone up here. Eli started talking more, laughing more, the terrible weight he'd carried for 20 months finally starting to lift. Toby attached himself to Maggie completely. Called her Miss Maggie 100 times a day. Followed her everywhere. Helped with everything. And Joe fell in love. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Just a slow, steady growing of something warm and real. The way she smiled at his sons. The way she hummed while she worked. The way she touched his arm when she walked past. The way she made the house feel alive again. One night after the boys were asleep, they sat on the porch, cold but clear, stars blazing overhead. Maggie. I think it's time. She turned to look at him. Time for what? Joe reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box. Clara's wedding ring cleaned and polished. Clara would want you to have this. She'd want it used, not sitting in a drawer collecting dust. Maggie's breath caught. Joe! I ain't good with words, never was. But I know what I feel. And I feel like you're meant to be here, with us, forever. He opened the box. Margaret Holloway, will you marry me? Maggie's tears fell silver in the starlight. Yes. Her voice broke on the word. Yes, Joe. I'll marry you. He slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for her all along. Inside the house, a small face appeared at the window. Then another, then another. 3 boys watching their father propose. 3 boys seeing hope become real. Eli's voice barely audible through the glass. She said yes. Chaos erupted. The door flew open. Boys tumbled out, surrounded them both. Everyone laughing, everyone crying, everyone holding on. Joe looked at his family. This improbable, impossible family built from loss and hope and the stubborn refusal to give up. We're getting married, he said. We know. Toby was bouncing with excitement. We heard everything. We were listening at the window. Of course you were. When's the wedding? Tomorrow. Can it be tomorrow? Not tomorrow. Maggie laughed through her tears. These things take planning. How long? A month, maybe less. That's forever. It'll go fast. She pulled all 3 boys close. I promise. Joe watched them. His sons, his future wife, his family. Clara's ring glittered on Maggie's finger. And somewhere up on the hill, he could have sworn he heard his first wife laughing. Laughing because her stubborn husband had finally learned to live again. The wedding was set for the 2nd Sunday in February. 3 weeks to plan. 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks that felt like 3 years to everyone involved. Toby asked every morning at breakfast, Is it today? Is today the wedding day? Not yet, son. But it's been forever. It's been 4 days. That's forever when you're 5. Maggie laughed. That sound had become Joe's favorite thing. Rich and warm and full of life. He couldn't believe he'd almost ridden away from it. The boys threw themselves into preparations. Eli appointed himself head of operations, made lists, assigned tasks, checked and double-checked everything. We need flowers, he announced one morning. Can't have a wedding without flowers. It's February, Joe pointed out. Nothing's blooming. Then we'll make paper ones. Miss Maggie taught Nate how to fold paper birds. He can fold paper flowers. Nate looked up from his breakfast. Shy smile. I can try. That's settled then. Nate handles flowers. Toby, you're in charge of the rings. I'm in charge of something. You carry them down the aisle. Most important job of all. Toby's chest puffed with pride. I won't drop them, I promise. You better not. Papa only gets married twice. Can't mess it up. Joe watched his sons planning his wedding. These boys who'd been silent and broken 3 months ago, now full of purpose, full of life. Maggie caught his eye across the table, smiled. You okay? Better than okay. His voice was rough. Best I've been in 20 months. Just 20 months. Maybe ever. Don't tell Clara's ghost I said that. She already knows. Maggie's voice was soft. She knows everything, and she's happy for us. How can you be so sure? Because I'd be happy for Robert if he found someone. Anyone who really loves someone wants them to be happy, even after, especially after. The week before the wedding, Walter and Agnes Prescott came to visit. Agnes had appointed herself wedding coordinator. 60 years old, tough as leather, with a heart of pure gold beneath her gruff exterior. "The church is reserved," she announced, spreading papers across the kitchen table. "Reverend Morrison will officiate. The women's auxiliary is handling food for the reception. All you need to do is show up and say your vows." "We can't let you do all this," Maggie protested. "It's too much." "Nonsense. First wedding in this valley in 3 years. We're all starved for celebration. Let us have our fun." "But the cost?" "Handled. Don't argue with me, Margaret Holloway. You won't win." Joe hid his smile. Agnes Prescott was a force of nature. Arguing with her was like arguing with a blizzard. Walter pulled Joe aside while the women talked details. "You doing all right, son?" "Better than all right." "No second thoughts?" "Not one." Walter nodded, approval in his weathered face. "That's good, real good. I was worried when you came to my place that first day. Looked like a man who'd given up on living." "I had, mostly." "And now?" Joe looked through the doorway, at Maggie laughing with Agnes, at his boys showing off Nate's paper flowers. "Now I can't imagine ever feeling that way again." "That's love, son, real love. The kind that saves you even when you don't know you need saving." "You sound like you're speaking from experience." 52 years married to Agnes. Best decision I ever made, even when she drives me crazy." "I heard that," Agnes called from the kitchen. "You drive me crazy too, Walter Prescott. Every single day." "See what I mean?" Walter grinned. "Love." The night before the wedding, Joe couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch in the cold, breath fogging in the air, stars blazing overhead. The door opened. Maggie came out wrapped in a quilt. Couldn't sleep either. Too much thinking. She sat beside him, close but not touching. They'd been careful about that. Proper. No one could say they'd been inappropriate. Tomorrow, that would change. "Having second thoughts." Maggie's voice was careful. "No. You." "Third thoughts. Fourth thoughts. Fifth thoughts." Joe turned to look at her. "Should I be worried?" "Not the kind of thoughts you're thinking." She pulled the quilt tighter. "More like, am I good enough? Can I really do this? What if I mess it up? What if the boys realize I'm not their mama and never will be and decide they don't want me after all? Maggie. What if you wake up one morning and realize you just married me because you were lonely, because I was convenient, because your boys needed someone and I was there? Maggie. What if... Joe kissed her. First time he'd kissed her. First time he'd kissed anyone since Clara. It was gentle, careful, a question more than a statement. She answered by kissing him back. When they finally pulled apart, Maggie's eyes were wet. "I guess that answers my questions." "You ain't convenient." Joe's voice was rough. "You ain't a substitute. You ain't anything except the woman I choose to spend the rest of my life with. And I'm choosing you, Maggie. Not because I have to, because I want to." "You really mean that?" "I really mean it." "Then why can't we just stay out here all night, skip the wedding? Already feels like we're married." "Because you deserve better. You deserve the dress in the church and the whole town watching. You deserve to know that I'm proud to stand up in front of everyone and say you're mine." Maggie laughed through her tears. "When did you get so romantic?" "Somewhere between almost dying in a blizzard and falling in love with the woman who saved me." Smooth talker. Just honest. He took her hand. "Go get some sleep. Tomorrow's a big day." "The biggest." She stood, kissed him one more time, then went inside. Joe sat alone on the porch, smiling like a fool. Tomorrow he was getting married. Tomorrow everything would change. And for the first time in 20 months, he wasn't scared of change. Morning came cold and clear. The boys were up before dawn, bouncing off walls with excitement. Eli tried to maintain order, but eventually gave up. "Just don't break anything," he told his brothers. "And don't get your good clothes dirty before we even get to the church." Joe dressed in his best suit, the one he'd worn to Clara's funeral. It felt strange putting it on for a wedding. Strange, but right. He looked in the mirror. Same suit, different man. The man who'd worn this suit 20 months ago had been broken, hollow, ready to lie down and die. The man wearing it now was alive. "Papa?" Eli appeared in the doorway. "Time to go." "I know. Just give me a minute." "You okay?" "Yeah. Just saying goodbye." Eli understood. He always understood. "She'd be proud of you, Mama. She'd be real proud." "I hope so." "I know so." Eli walked over, straightened Joe's collar. "You look good, Papa. Maggie's gonna cry when she sees you." "That good or bad?" "Good crying, the happy kind." They walked out together, father and son, ready for what came next. The church was packed, every family in the valley, people Joe knew, people he didn't, all crowded into the small building to witness this wedding. Mrs. Hartford sat in the front row, watching everything with sharp eyes, ready to silence anyone who dared whisper criticism. Walter and Agnes Prescott sat nearby, Agnes clutching a handkerchief she'd definitely need. Joe stood at the altar with Reverend Morrison, waiting, heart pounding. Eli and Nate sat in the front pew. Toby stood beside Joe, clutching the rings in his small fist. "Don't be nervous, Papa," Toby whispered loudly. Everyone heard. "I'm not nervous." "Your hands are shaking." "That's from the cold." "It ain't cold in here." Laughter rippled through the church. Joe's face heated. Then the door opened, and Maggie walked in. She wore a simple dress. Blue, not white. The same blue as the shawl Joe had bought her. Her hair was down for the first time he'd seen. Auburn waves falling past her shoulders. She carried paper flowers. Nate's paper flowers. Roses and lilies, and something that might have been daisies folded with careful 11-year-old hands. She was the most beautiful thing Joe had ever seen. She walked toward him slowly, each step deliberate, her eyes never leaving his. The whole church held its breath. She reached the altar, stood beside him, smiled. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi," he whispered back. "You look handsome. You look—" "I don't have words." "That's a first." Reverend Morrison cleared his throat. "If we're ready to begin." "Ready." Joe's voice was steady despite his shaking hands. "Ready." Maggie's voice was strong. The ceremony was simple, traditional. The same words spoken by countless couples before them, but they felt new in Joe's ears. Sacred, true. "Do you, Josiah Callahan, take Margaret Holloway to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do." No hesitation, no doubt. "And do you, Margaret Holloway, take Josiah Callahan to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or worse, for richer or poorer in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Maggie's eyes were swimming with tears. "I do." "The rings, please." Toby stepped forward, opened his hand carefully. The rings sat in his palm, gleaming. "I didn't drop them," he announced proudly. More laughter. Joe took Clara's ring, the one Maggie had worn since the proposal, slid it more firmly onto her finger. Maggie took the simple band they'd bought in town, slid it onto Joe's finger. Her hands were shaking too. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Reverend Morrison smiled. "You may kiss the bride." Joe kissed Maggie. Not gentle this time, not careful. A kiss that said everything. "I choose you. I love you. I'm yours." The church erupted in applause. Toby grabbed both their legs. "We're a family now. A real family." Eli and Nate joined the huddle. All 5 of them tangled together at the altar. And somewhere in the rafters, or maybe just in Joe's imagination, he heard Clara laughing. That bright, joyful sound. He hoped she was dancing in heaven. The reception was chaos in the best way. Food everywhere, people everywhere. More hugs and congratulations than Joe could count. Mrs. Hartford approached with a small wrapped package. For the bride. Her voice was gruff. My wedding gift. Maggie opened it carefully. Inside was a delicate lace handkerchief yellowed with age. That belonged to my mother. Carried it at my own wedding 60 years ago. Tradition says it brings luck. Mrs. Hartford, I can't accept this. You can, and you will. This valley needs more families like yours, strong families, built on love, not convenience. You take that handkerchief, and you pass it to your own daughter someday. Maggie's breath caught. I can't have children. My body won't. Who said anything about your body? Mrs. Hartford nodded toward the boys. You've got 3 sons already. One of them will marry someday. Give you a daughter-in-law. Maybe granddaughters. Family doesn't end just because it starts different. Maggie hugged her. The tough old woman stiffened for a moment, then softened. Enough of that. Mrs. Hartford pulled back. Go dance with your husband. That's what weddings are for. Joe was talking with Walter when Maggie appeared at his side. Dance with me. I'm not much of a dancer. I don't care. Dance with me anyway. He let her lead him to the small space cleared for dancing, took her in his arms, started swaying. You really aren't much of a dancer, she murmured against his shoulder. Told you. I don't care. They swayed together. Off rhythm. Completely wrong, completely right. I love you, Joe said. First time he'd said it out loud. First time he'd let himself feel it fully. I love you too. Maggie pulled back to look at him. I've been wanting to say that for weeks. Why didn't you? Scared you'd run again. I'm done running. Promise? Promise. They danced until Toby tugged at Joe's leg. Papa, it's my turn. Your turn for what? To dance with Mama Maggie. Everything stopped. Joe looked at Maggie. She'd gone still, eyes wide. What did you call me? Her voice was barely a whisper. Toby's face scrunched with sudden worry. Mama Maggie, is that okay? I've been practicing. Eli said I should wait till after the wedding. Did I mess up? Maggie dropped to her knees, pulled Toby close. You didn't mess up. Her voice broke. You didn't mess up at all. That's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever called me. Really, really. Can I call you that, Mama Maggie, or just Mama, if that's okay? Maggie looked at Joe, asking permission. Clara's their mama, Joe said slowly. She always will be, but I think she'd be honored if they called you Mama too, if you want them to. If I want? Maggie laughed through her tears. I've wanted nothing else my whole life. She scooped Toby up, danced with him in her arms. Eli and Nate appeared, watching. We talked about it, Eli said quietly to Joe. All 3 of us. We want to call her Mama, not to replace our real Mama, but because she feels like Mama too. Is that betraying her memory? No, son. Joe's throat was tight. That's honoring it. Your mama wanted you to be loved, to be happy, to have a family. Maggie gives you all that. Calling her Mama doesn't take anything away from Clara. It just adds more love. You're sure? I'm sure. Eli nodded, then walked over to Maggie, tapped her shoulder. Can I have the next dance, Mama? Maggie's legs nearly gave out. She handed Toby to Nate, took Eli's hands. Let this too old 11-year-old boy lead her in an awkward dance. Thank you, she whispered, for letting me in, for trusting me, for loving us, Eli finished, for letting me love you. That's easy. You're easy to love, Mama Maggie. The party went late into the night. Joe watched his family, his wife, his sons, this impossible thing he'd almost thrown away. Around midnight, Toby fell asleep in Maggie's arms. Nate dozed against Joe's shoulder. Even Eli's eyes were drooping. "Time to go home," Joe announced. They loaded into the wagon. The boys piled in back with quilts, Joe and Maggie up front. The ride home was quiet, stars blazing overhead, cold air biting at their faces, but warmth inside, so much warmth. Joe. "Yeah. Thank you." "For what?" "For crashing into my life. For not giving up. For choosing us." She leaned against his shoulder. "For everything." "Should be thanking you. You saved us." "We saved each other." They pulled up to the ranch house. Home. Their home now. Joe carried Toby inside. Eli and Nate stumbled to their beds. In minutes, all three boys were asleep. Joe and Maggie stood in the kitchen. Alone. Married. Together. "So," Maggie said. "Now what?" "Now we live." Joe pulled her close. "We wake up tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. We raise our boys. We work our land. We build something good." "That sounds perfect." "It won't always be perfect. There'll be hard days, bad days, days we want to give up. But we won't give up. No, we won't." He kissed her forehead. "Because we're Callahans now, and Callahans don't quit." "I like the sound of that. Maggie Callahan." "Me too." They went to bed. Their bed. For the first time as husband and wife. Outside, snow began to fall. Gentle this time. Not the blizzard that had brought them together. Just soft flakes painting everything white and clean and new. Inside, a family slept in peace. A father who'd learned to live again. A mother who'd finally gotten her dream. Three boys who'd found their way back to joy. And in a cabin 15 miles away, a lamp still burned in the window. Maggie had left it there. A beacon for whoever might need it next. Because that was frontier law. That was how you survived. You lit a lamp. You opened your door. You let strangers become family. Joe woke once in the night. Maggie warm beside him. Snow falling outside. His sons breathing peacefully down the hall. He thought about Clara. About the storm. About all the broken pieces that had somehow fit together into something whole. He thought about Toby walking into a blizzard to find Maggie. About Eli finally letting go of his grief. About Nate finding his voice again. He thought about second chances. About letting love in. About being brave enough to hope. And he knew with absolute certainty that everything had led here. Every loss. Every fear. Every moment of despair. All of it pointing toward this. This woman beside him. This family he'd built. This life he'd almost thrown away. The storm had brought them together. But it was love that kept them whole. Joe closed his eyes, smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new reasons to be grateful. But tonight he had everything he needed. A wife who loved him, sons who were healing, a home filled with warmth, and somewhere in heaven, Clara dancing among the stars watching over them all. The Callahans were home, and they would never be alone again.